Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Brian's Horror Corner, or welcome if you are new. And this is the initial, the very first in my series, my 1980s horror movie series. My first review video for the very first year of the 1980s, which is 1980. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about the movie we're going to take a look at today. So, the first movie I selected for 1980 is, drum roll, Alligator. I got the nice Screen Factory 4K Ultra HD and Blu-ray edition here. So I've got the slipcover. I really like this artwork here. So yeah, we're going to talk about Alligator, which is obviously from 1980, as all these movies in the next 3 months are going to be for my review. So let's just go ahead and get into it. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the this Scream Factory edition after my review. Just kind of talk about that a little bit as well. So, Alligator is a 1980 American independent horror film directed by Louis Teague and written by John Sayles. It also includes an appearance by actress Sue Lyon in her last screen role. Set in Chicago, the film follows a police officer and a reptile expert who track an enormous, ravenous man-eating alligator flushed down the toilet years earlier that is attacking residents after escaping from the city's sewers. So that's kind of the premise. So in 1968, a teenage girl purchases a baby American alligator while on vacation with her family at a tourist trap in Florida. When the family returns home to Chicago, the girl's surly, animal phobic father promptly flushes it down the toilet into the city's sewers. The baby alligator survives by feeding on discarded carcasses of animals used by an illegal experimentation and dumped into the sewers. These animals had been used as test subjects for an experimental growth formula intended to increase agricultural livestock meat production. However, the project was abandoned because while the formula had the desired effect, making the animals larger than normal, it had the unwanted side effect of massively increasing the animal's metabolism, causing them to develop an insatiable appetite. During the 12 years spanning during the 12 years spanning 1968 and 1980, the baby alligator bioaccumulates concentrated amounts of the formula from feeding on these carcasses, causing it to mutate and grow into a perpetually ravenous 36-foot, 11-meter monster resembling I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right, Deinosuchus per, perusus, perusus, basically like a dinosaur kind of alligator hybrid with an almost impenetrable hide. So yeah, um, excuse me. Oh, my eye was itch. So yeah, that's the setup and the premise for Alligator. As far as the cast goes, we have Robert Forster as Detective David Madison, Robin Riker as Marissa Kendall, Michael Gazzo as Chief Clark, Dean Jager as Slade, Sidney Lassick as Luke Gutschall, Jack Carter as the mayor, Perry Lane as Officer Jim Kelly, and Henry Silva as Colonel Brock. So yeah, that's the setup, the premise, and the cast for the 1980 film Alligator. I really had a good time with this movie. It really is a lot better than it has any right to be when you kind of read the premises I just did there and kind of understand what's going on here. But because it's very well written, well performed, and well directed as well, this movie really works. So of course, it's capitalizing on the success of Jaws from 5 years earlier, the same way that Piranha did from 1977, Grizzly did from 1978, and what's the other one that I'm thinking of? Orca the Killer Whale from 1977. It's capitalizing on that whole sort of aquatic creature feature, if you want to say, from Jaws in 1975. But let's just start with the things that I really liked about this movie, the pros, and it's a really well written creature feature. I think that's the thing that stands out first and foremost for me. You don't expect this kind of writing um, that includes a lot of witty banter and dialogue between the characters, as well as the fact that it's just a really solid story in terms of its create not creativity, but just the essence of it, the origins of it. That's what I was searching for. But it's really the dialogue between the characters. Just it's very well written. You don't expect that from a fairly low budget. I don't think this movie was a high budget made movie. But yeah, this is very well written. So really, a lot of the credit goes to John Sayles there. I thought this movie stood out in that regard with the writing. I really like the setting for the good part of this movie, where it's being in a large city sewer drain system. It has a lot of visual aesthetic or visual authenticity, I should say, which is basically saying it looks exactly like you would think a sewer in a major city would look like. There's rats, there's garbage, there's brown water. There's all kinds of grossness, and they do a really good job of setting up as such. Also, it has that claustrophobic and creepy atmosphere that really helps create this movie and the essence of it. So I really enjoyed the setting overall. I really appreciate the tone and the fun that this movie goes for and has throughout. Given the concept of a genetically mutated alligator that attacks, they do a great job of striking a balance of horror along with some tongue in cheek sort of humor as well. And it just all really worked for me. Like I said, the writing's a big part of it, but they also knew what kind of movie they were making. Everybody involved knew what kind of movie they were making. And while it's certainly not a horror comedy, it's not a silly movie or an overly silly movie, a spoof or anything like that. It's taken seriously. There's still those moments, especially between the characters, of fun being had, of those moments of relief, of comedic relief, if you will. Very dry, not slapsticky, not over the top or anything like that. But I thought this movie really struck a great balance in terms of the horror of it, along with the sort of tongue in cheek fun that they have with the movie. That really stood out to me. Everyone involved, as I said, is on the same page and they know what kind of movie they're making. The cast, speaking of that, the cast does a really good job, especially led by Robert Forster. He's just, man, I really love the character. I love that character in this movie, and a lot of the credit goes to the writing, but it also goes to Robert Forster as Detective Madison with his down to earth, everyman portrayal, but also quirky charm. You also have good supporting performances as well by Michael Gazzo, Robin Riker, and Henry Silva, to name a few that stood out to me. So yeah, it's rare that in sort of what's supposed to be like a B creature feature movie from the late '70s, early '80s, you get the writing and the performances that you get in this movie, but it really works for the movie to its benefit. So, but yeah, Robert Forster's really the steel shower here, in my opinion. The directing of Louis Teague is really good in this movie, especially with the lighting in the sewers and how he does a good job of not focusing on the alligator for too long because if you're not familiar, they used a real alligator, and then had the alligator crawl around under like this model city, so it looked a lot bigger than it actually was. As they shot it on this model, this small model city, and then the alligator would crawl through it. They also had like a big mechanical sort of puppet alligator, but the director does a really good job of knowing not to focus too long on any one alligator. So they focus on the alligator's eyes, they focus on its like its head, they focus on its tail, but they don't focus on the whole thing and sit on it for too long because if they did, given the fact this was made in 79 or 80, you'd see some of the phoniness of it, some of the outdatedness of it. And so I really give the director Louis Teague a lot of credit for that. Um, as I said, he focuses just enough on the alligator without showing too much. A little bit like Jaws from 1975. Steven Spielberg did it not by choice. He did it because they kept having problems with the mechanical shark, but it worked to the picture's benefit. Here, he purposely did it. He even talks about that in one of the interviews that are special features that I'll get into after my review here. But yeah, I thought he really had a good vision for this movie, and he really executed it well. I thought the practical effects, both in terms of the look of the creature, with how much they showed it, as well as the blood and gore that's used in this movie, were really effective given the time that this takes place in, where less is more, basically. And less is definitely more with the creature, as I got into before. But also, this movie does have blood and gore in it, but it's not overly gory or overly bloody, but the scenes that they have it in are very effective for this movie, where you see limbs being severed, there's one particular scene having to do with a kid's pool party, which I won't say any more than that, but that really raised an eyebrow while I was watching it. So yeah, they just do a really good job with that as well. So yeah, those are kind of my pros. Getting into the cons of this movie, there's not a lot, but it does kind of come off a little bit like a made-for-TV movie in certain aspects, especially as far as the cinematography goes and the filming. It's nothing special from a cinematography standpoint. It probably has to do with the budget, I'm sure, but it did feel a little bit at times, especially in the first half when they're setting things up and trying to build up characters. Like you were watching a movie from the early 80s on TV that was a made for TV movie, even though it wasn't. So that's one thing that stood out to me. It's obviously not an overly original idea or concept, as like many other movies in the era, as I talked about before. It's very much trying to draw off the success of Jaws, even down to having similar type of characters. You got the scientist here, played by Robin Riker. You think of Hooper from Jaws. You got this detective Madison, you think of Brody. You even got Colonel Brock, who comes in for a short time in this movie, that kind of reminds you of Quint a little bit. This overly confident and cocky, but ultimately meets his demise character, and who's going to come in and save the day, sort of thing. So this movie definitely, to say that it drew from the movie Jaws is an understatement. Again, that's not really a huge con though, because a lot of movies during the time did it, and I mean, it is a different creature, so that's just something I wanted to bring up. It's basically like urban Jaws in many ways. It's like a version of Jaws in an urban setting. I will say the first part of the movie could be construed, I should say, by some as being slow, kind of a slow burn as the movie's setting things up in a deliberate way before going full out action and craziness. But I think because the dialogue was so well written and the performances were so good, I was interested to see where things were going to go. They give you just enough with the alligator, where even though it's not the big action and craziness that we get in the third act of this movie, and to me, there's still enough going on that I was into it. I wasn't overly bored, but I could see where some people might be because it does move a little bit slow in the first third to third and a half, I would say, of the movie. But other than that, guys, I really enjoyed this movie from 1980. It was a first time watch for me. Obviously, it's the first time that I did a review for it on my channel, but it's also the first time I've ever seen this movie. I really didn't know much about it, other than I knew that it was, it was drawing off of Jaws and it was about an alligator. So, but I was pleasantly surprised by how well it was done from a technical standpoint, performances, directing, and especially writing, and even effects. Um, so I'm going to give this movie an 8.5 out of 10. I really enjoyed it, and I'm definitely glad to have it in my collection. And I'm even more glad to have this version in my collection. I believe this only became available a few years ago, like around 2020, if I'm not mistaken. So 3 or 4 years ago, but it's got a ton of special features. First of all, it's a 3 disc collection. So you've got the 4K Ultra HD, which doesn't really do me much good because I don't have a 4K player. Maybe I'll get one eventually. I'm not sure, but it also includes two Blu-rays. One is the theatrical version, and one is the television version. Obviously, for this review, I watched the theatrical version because I'm assuming the television version is probably a little bit more watered down. Um, but the disc that I watch has a ton of features. You've got interviews, you've got new scans. I watched a couple interviews, one with actress Robin Riker and one with Louis Teague, the director. And that's where I got a lot of that. He talked about not focusing on the alligator because they kind of knew with the budget that they had, they didn't want to make it look too hokey or fake or anything. But there's an audio commentary with Robert Forster and Louis Teague. It must have been before Robert Forster passed away. I believe he passed away in 2019. Interview with screenwriter John Sayles, theatrical trailer, teaser trailer, TV spots, trailers from hell, filmmaker Karen Kasami on Alligator. Yeah, each of the discs has some special features here. I don't know how well you can see that, but yeah, I really like the artwork as well here. Um, you got the same there, and so I'm really glad that I got this Screen Factory edition of this movie. Even before seeing the movie, I was glad because of what I was seeing here. But the fact that the movie is an 8.5 out of 10 for me just enhances my gratefulness of having this version. So, excuse me, guys, 8.5 out of 10 for Alligator from 1980, my very first movie review, individual movie review video for this ongoing series, and specifically for this 1980 aspect of the series for the next 3 months here. Go ahead and comment down below if you guys have seen Alligator from 1980. What your thoughts are on it. Do you like it as much as I do? Less, more? Why not? Please like this video, hit the little notification bell, and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my upcoming reviews for this series, or so you don't miss any of my great horror content. Not only the next 3 months of this series, but all the things that I have coming out after it and into next year. So, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoy this series. I know I'm already enjoying it with my first watch here. Hope everybody's doing well, but as always, stay scared. Bye.